Today we're gonna be reviewing my buddy's old... Wait a second. Doesn't matter. Oh, I can't believe somebody just left that for me here. Oh my God, this is the new 2023 Scorpa. Somebody just left it here for me. I'm taking it. I don't care. Wait a second. It's got an engine. Oh, perfect. Oh my God. It actually starts. Of course it starts. If you ever stroll through the woods and you see a brand new 2023 Scorpa just sitting around, don't just take it. Do a proper review. Hey folks, look, this is a 2023 Scorpa 250 factory model. It was kindly lent to us by Don from Cascade Imports. He's located in Mission. He is the Canadian Scorpa importer and also carries Montesas. So if you ever have anything you need for trials, he is your man to go to. Hey, listen, this thing is amazing. It is an absolute beast. I have lots of points to talk about, but I think first we'll start with the workmanship and the craftsmanship of this bike. The color scheme is amazing. The plastics flow nicely. Everything is lining up perfect. A lot of previous years Scorpas, you had a little bit of misalignment on the plastics. This thing is very nice. So cosmetically wise, a few key things to note. We've got these rubber grips here at your ankles. Those actually make a big difference. I can feel that I can grip the bike better. When you ride enduro, you're gripping with your knees. Trials, you don't have that option because there is nothing in the cavity to grab. There is no gas tank, there is no seat. Having these rubber grips makes a big difference. You can hold the bike with your ankles. That gives you a bit more feedback. That is a very nice add-on. They've added little plastic stoppers on the bottom, triple clamp on the fork, so when you are fully turned on your bike, you're not bashing aluminum into the frame, which on a lot of brands, it wears out the paint and just doesn't look very good. A lot of times we'll use old bicycle tubes to wrap around the bottom tree. But this came in factory like that, so that's good on them, good for Scorpa and Sherpa doing that. Foot pegs are no longer S3, they are Scorpa exclusive. They feel pretty good. They're a little bit narrower. My feet feel really comfortable on it, so that's not bad at all. I still prefer the S3 pegs. These pegs are pretty good too. We'll talk about the sprocket. The old Scorpa models, they had just a sticker on the sprocket to cover all of your holes. So this one is a full billet sprocket that's been machined and no more sticker to be ripped off. So you always have that coverage. So while we're talking about the looks of the bike, we can talk about the rear fender. It is flexible kind of one way, just because they've put 3 radiuses onto the split line. So you've got a big radius going one way and 2 radiuses going the other way, and that prevents it from flexing. If you don't end up putting zap straps instead of your mounting bolts, then you will most likely snap the fender there or will crack the mounts on the airbox. So that's something to be mindful of. Right away, I would probably just take the bolts out and put a zap strap on both sides. Keep the center bolt in for rigidity and for a good mount. So that is not ideal, but the fenders are cheap. Probably the cheapest fenders out of all the bikes that I've seen. Probably the biggest thing that we should talk about is the power. The power and the delivery of that power on this bike. So this is a fuel injected bike. This is the throttle body injection. Boy, I gotta tell you, this thing is insane. The power, I've never felt power so clean and so crisp and so manageable. Let me put it to you this way. If you make a mistake on the hill and you need to recover, that recovery is instant. So if you chop your throttle, you got to get back on the throttle. The recovery is instantaneous. It's an absolute powerhouse. So this is a 250, feels more than a 300 of a carb bike. 250 is plenty. I'm a 300 guy. I'm a heavier set rider. I need a little bit more power, cleaner recovery, and 250s on the carb bikes, they always lag a little bit. This thing is clean through and through. It doesn't matter what RPM range you're at. You crack the throttle, it pretty much goes on command. If you want to dumb it down a little bit, reduce the power, there is rain mode, and I'll tell you how the rain mode works. And I've actually tried it yesterday and it made a big difference. So the rain mode makes it feel as if it was a carbureted bike, creates a little bit of a sluggish feel off the bottom pickup, but then it's still crisp and it's still clean. So imagine if you have a carb bike, it's running a little bit rich. That's what this rain mode feels like. Yeah, it's still crisp and responsive. It just kind of dials it back a little bit so you don't have a powerhouse explosion. 100% rain mode works. I've tried it on the same hill. Just flick the switch up and down a couple times and compared it. So great setting for those rainy, muddy days. I wanted to talk about the bike balance. The bike does feel raked out, and that gives it stability. That stability comes with a bit of a price of handling. For example, if you're stuffing your front wheel into a ledge, for some reason, I don't know why, the bars get a bit of a kick till the bike stabilizes. So the initial impact coming into stuffing it to a ledge, you get a little bit of unstable impact. You come to a stop, the bike wants to balance. It's very easy to balance it. It's very predictable on the downhills. Another thing that I've noticed on stability testing is the input from your hips. So any hip movement is very responsive to anything you apply on the pegs. And it's also, we compared it neck to neck with the old Scorpa. It had a preference on the body position leaning back a little bit to gain traction. This bike likes to be neutral body position, and all of your input goes in through your feet. So any kind of pressure you put into the pegs, you're pushing into the pegs, that picks up the traction. So it's a very well balanced body position. You don't feel awkward. You don't feel like you're hanging back too far just to gain that little bit of traction. That is a very nice feature. It makes you ride a bit more relaxed, takes away the fatigue. What I did notice with the rake, if we go back to talking about the rake, if you got any off camber corners, uphill, downhill, the front end does tend to push a little bit. It's a brand new motor for this year. Sherco and Scorpa really worked hard on weight reduction. The ingenuity of the fuel injection, they've done a phenomenal job. They shaved a lot of weight off the bike. It does feel light if you're moving it around in the truck, but when you're riding it, I think because of the raked out front end and a lot of stability on the bike, it doesn't feel as playful. And what I mean, it takes a lot of rider input to make the bike dance or to do hops and moves. And since I've been riding a TRS, well, the TRS is like a boxer puppy on steroids. It just wants to bounce all over the place, yet it's still stable. So getting on this, I was like, you know, this is the lightest trials bike on the market, but it doesn't necessarily feel like that. It doesn't dance around, doesn't move around as well as the TRS, but generally you feel the lightness of it when you're climbing, you're doing hits. It's super light, very manageable, very responsive to any input that you do. So because we're dealing with the new motor, figured out how to run this bike or how to get it started from cold. Initially you do your first kick. It doesn't have to be a hard kick, just to get the fuel pump going. You'll hear the fuel pump whining. And then the second kick has to be a good, heavy, girthy kick. You can't put a tiny person on the bike and expect them to start it. Danny. We should insert the French Bulldog and explosion and that's what she said meme. Anyways, that's what I mean. It has to be a good solid kick. You can't pussyfoot it. You won't fire up the bike. But if you put some weight behind it, it fires up on the second kick on cold. And you got to make sure you're going through a full kick stroke, not half the kick stroke. That won't get the motor running. So this has been easy on this bike. It does feel different than the previous years. I felt like there is a little bit more room. I'm 5'10". I did feel cramped on my older Scorpas. To compensate for that, I had to push the bars forward. which it kind of made me hunched over and a back pain. So this bike, a little bit less bars forward. I'm fairly lined up with the center of the stanchion. It does feel like there is more space. The best way to compare it, I'm gonna do this in part 2, is to do an overlay of the factory images like I've done with my trials comparison video, and just see exactly where we've gained differences from the old bike, and that'll help us understand better where we get the room. But if you are a taller person, this will feel a little bit better than the old bike. You can also compensate by moving clamps forward maybe a ½ inch. No, they didn't give us any adjustability on that, so you would have to get custom clamps that are machined with an offset. So that's something that can be done. I did do the air filter change, and the removal was super easy. There's one clip, you pop it off. It's a tubular style air filter. Change the filter on the cage. It was fairly easy to install, but the one thing I don't like is on other bikes, you can kind of put your hand inside the air box and feel around the edges of the filter, make sure the foam is fully seated. This one, you're kind of taking a guess. The only guidance you really have is whether that cage lines up with the clip or not. And after wiggling it a few ways and trying it, it seated itself fairly easily and the clip was lined up, so there is no forceful movement. It's just push the clip down and the air filter is seated. Definitely an improvement from an old bike with the air filter, because if any of you changed the old air filters on the Scorpas, you probably swore a lot, and most of the time you would have to take off the air box to get around to everything and clean the dust out of the every corner. So overall, very pleased with this product. And would I buy one? Yeah, I really want one. It's amazing. It sets a bar to a whole new level for how trials bikes should be. You get the taste of that clean power. It's insane. Clutch is very nice on this bike. It's smooth, and the gearbox is absolute butter. You change gears, you know it clicked in gear and finds neutral very easily. Actually, we did a hill climb. My buddy rode it prior to me, left it in second gear. I thought it was in neutral, so I got on it and I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this climb in 4th gear. Well, I ended up trying it in 5th gear from dead stop, and this bike pulled it. It was just, you know, it kind of struggled a little bit at first. It picked up, and it was a powerhouse all the way up, and that is impressive, absolutely impressive. This is worth every penny. The cool thing is also to note is this is the first year that I've seen the price is not different for 250 to 300. So both of these bikes cost the same. It's really your preference what you want to go for. I'm telling you, if you're a regular, they call it clubman rider. Here we just call them intermediate advanced riders. The 250 is plenty. It's gonna serve you well. Everything, all the running gear is standard high quality running gear on these bikes. The geometry is what counts. The motor is what counts. I'd love to see the competitors come out with a fuel injection and just to see what it would feel like, because this opens up the trials world to a whole new meaning. This is absolutely insane. And Danny, I haven't watched your video yet because I didn't want to have a biased review. I wanted to ride this thing. Obviously I've been watching TrialTube for many years, but I started doing my own videos. I wanted to ride this thing first and see what it's like, make my own review, and then after I make my video, I'll watch your video. Danny, you're doing a good job. I love your little sarcastic little French bulldog explosions and whatever. Anyhow, I'm gonna go for a ride. This is my last day on this bike. I gotta give it back. Again, thanks to Don from Cascade Imports here in Mission, BC. He was kind enough to lend me this bike for a review, and this bike is absolutely worth it. But anyways, this thing rocks, and keep on riding. Thanks for watching.